Hey, She Slayers, and welcome to another episode of She Slays Today podcast. I am your host, Dr. Lauren Brunswick, and today is episode number 201. But I have a treat for you. We are going to go back in time today as we bring out of the vault episode number 35 with Dr. Monique Andrews. So before you're like, oh, Lauren, that's not special. How dare you? That woman is a national treasure, international treasure. Second of all, that's not what you were saying. You were saying, I can go back and listen to episode 35 anytime I want. No, you can't. You might not know this, or maybe if you're semi new to the podcast, you're like, yeah, I did notice that your episode started at number 50 or 51. I don't know. But you actually don't have access to the first 50 episodes of She Slays Today podcast unless you are a supporter at our level of $3.99, which is that once a month, buy me a coffee. You know, if we spend hours together, you can buy me a coffee once in a while. Anyways, that access of the Patreon group does have access to the first 50. You don't. So, but you're getting a whole new intro because I have life updates for you people. Okay. So yesterday I lost probably, I'm going to guess somewhere between my 25th to 30th patient in my career from not being able to control my face and adapt under stress quick enough. I will try and tell you the story with as much detail that it is as funny and enraging as it was to me, but with also not getting into the weeds. So we're doing our pre-shift meeting, and our associate Randy says like, hey, heads up on this kid, this 1-year-old that's coming in. Mom and dad dropped him down to once a month a couple months ago. Because apparently they live far away and it's hard to get here. And he has had, and this is the second time he's had an ear infection. And so I told mom last time, like, once a month is not enough, apparently, to be helping with the ear infections. I'd really recommend trying every other week. Are they talking about tubes? And yes, the doctors are saying if he gets one more ear infection, he's going to get tubes. And she wasn't going to be around. So like, this was like our pre-shift meeting of like the handoff of like, hey, check in. Things are not good with this kid. And see if we can get mom and dad to do every other week. So I see mom, and this isn't the first time I've met mom. Like I just haven't seen her in a while because she's doing once a month. But I saw him a lot as when he was a baby. I adjusted her when she was pregnant with him. So I'm like, hey, it's so good to see you. How are things going? Things are going great. I'm like, oh, cool. So I look in kids' ears because we do that a lot. And, they're not great. I don't send for antibiotics like deal, but like, let's just say that if I were urgent care, this kid would be getting another round of antibiotics. And I'm like, so Randy told me that, they're talking about tubes. And she's like, yeah, if he gets another ear infection. I was like, okay, so now you live far away. She's like, oh, well, we live about 20 minutes. And I was like, oh, okay. So now here's the deal. Is I asked this next question because I know that I will pretty much do anything, including give away care. So this kid doesn't have to have tubes. And so I go, oh, okay. So is it financial then that you're not coming in every other week? Because I know Randy suggested, based on the ear infections, and them talking about tubes, that every other week. And she goes, oh, no, it's not that. It's just another trip, And I was like, oh, okay. And she goes, actually, he's been doing really well. Wait for it. So we were actually thinking about taking a break. Now, this is where maybe if I had a more adaptable nervous system, I would have pivoted in time. I didn't. My face said everything. And I said, oh, you're thinking about doing the opposite. And she's like, well, yeah, I mean, he's been doing real good. And I'm like, obviously not good enough. They're talking about tubes. And she's like, oh, well, we don't really care if he needs tubes. Tubes run in our family. Yeah, it got worse. So I go, tubes don't run in anyone's family. A suppressed immune system might. And I can't help his immune system get stronger at once a month. It's just not frequent enough. And she just gave me this look like, well, we've taken a break before and it's gone fine. And I'm like, and then I just was like, okay. So I was clearly disgruntled and I adjusted the child very lovingly because he's so cute. But I was like, okay, well, you're going to do what you're going to do. It sounds like you have your mind made up. My recommendation, I completely agree with Randy that if you would like to support his immune system, and I let her know too, like, hey, tubes are not going to fix what's going on. Tubes aren't going to fix a suppressed immune system. Here's what I've seen. Now, granted, was I like, here's my blah, blah, blah. No, it was this tone. And I was like, so if you want to help your kid live a better quality of life, I would recommend every other week. And if it's about finances, please talk to us. We will bend over backwards to make it work for you. And then she walked up to the front desk and quit. So not my proudest moment. Could I have saved it? I don't know. Honestly, it's one of those things where I think my brain realized like Randy had planted the seed that we could help him more. She had the last month to think about what she was going to do. And that's the answer she came to. We're going to take a break. Because in her words, he's done fine taking breaks before and come back. And so this is an area that I need to have someone on the podcast because there's these moments of, I don't want to say awakening or enlightenment because it's far from that. Where I realize, with a patient that we've had for a long time, that they missed it, like in full radical responsibility, our fault, 100%. Like, and I think that's where my brain gets in the way, is going like, we missed it. How did we miss it? How did we let it get this far from the truth? And I know we can't own everything. Like there's a lot going on, and believe me, I've done a lot of like self-work on somebody can recognize the truth. Somebody can recognize that if the goal is to improve quality of life and avoid surgery, then once a week is likely what the child needs, and even realize that we will give them the care for free if that's what they need in order to get to a stronger place, and still choose otherwise. And so that's been like my whole control issues and stuff like that. But yeah, in general, I do an okay job. Like I am me. What you get on the podcast is like the non-watered down version of me 99% of the time. I don't know. I have some patients who listen, but they don't get the watered down version of me. So their opinion doesn't matter. Like yes, I do a okay job of delivering the truth in a kind manner. But sometimes there's just such a disconnect, that I just go like mute, or I rage. And I should at least learn to go mute because I don't lose them as patients but like, honestly, haven't I already? Like even if she would have continued to do once a month, that kid's getting tubes. Like I already lost them. So yeah, I don't know. There's really it's kind of a funny story. I didn't tell it in the funniest way. I'm going to have to work on my stand-up career a little bit. Cause yeah, it got serious there, but like I walked to the desk at the end of the shift and I'm like, let me guess, so-and-so quit care. And she's like, yeah, did she say something to you? And I'm like, no, more like I said something to her. And my staff's been around for 5 to 7 years, just laughed. And they're like, what'd you do? And I'm like, it's not my fault, you guys. So anyways, today, you know what? This is a good time for anger issues for us to reprise Dr. Mo's episode, because the original title was Science, Spirituality, and Consciousness. Update. I don't know if I'm any better at meditating than I was back then. Definitely frequency not. I did get Kirby a brain tap for Christmas. # not an ad. # not a sponsor yet. And I used it once to try to fall asleep, which it actually stressed me out because I was like really focused that I wanted it to do its job. And it was like, I felt like if I wasn't asleep by the end of the meditation, that I was broken somehow and I didn't want it to feel bad. Yeah, this is things that my therapist works on where I'm like, well, I just want you to feel like you're doing a good job. These are real things I say to my therapist, and her mouth drops of like, Lauren, I don't need you to make me feel good about myself. I'm like, good job. That's the wing two. That's the 3 wing two. So anyways, I'm still anxious. I still suck at meditation. I didn't go back and listen to the episode because I am hypercritical of myself and I have never listened to an episode. Most of the time I don't need to because, oh, that's not true. I've listened to one episode and it was Dr. Bobby Vorman's. After she passed, I went back and listened to her episode. But no, so like, I'm just going to trust you. This was like one of our highest shared. She's phenomenal. Yeah, so I'm just going to trust that I maybe didn't completely suck. So before we jump in, thank you to our newest Patreons, J. Bess Ruby, who joined in at the $12.99 marketing level. That's where you get a 20-minute marketing thing that you can have your CAs listen to. This month, we talked about how to increase your story views. I went through like 8 different tips there. And Julie Miller, who's actually an acupuncturist who I got to meet at Chiro Intensive, Elise Rigney's program. She's a phenomenal woman, not a chiropractor, but we still let her in the group. I'm just kidding. Of course we do. And she's at that roadmap to success. And that is where you get the marketing thing. Don't I do a good job of selling it? The thing that is the marketing. And then the once a month live training. What do we talk about this month? Oh, this month we talked about hiring and training CAs, which I need to add up. But this is not a bragging moment, but I think I've probably hired 15, maybe more CAs. Last year was that was an opportunity to improve hiring because apparently I know how to see potential, but I don't know how to see potential for people to have other opportunities in their life and move and become stay-at-home moms, etc. Okay, hold on. I'm going to announce the first male guest, but just wait. If you are looking for a conference to go to, I am going to the Remarkable Practice Retention and Conversion master class in Orlando, May 5th and 6th. I gave away the golden ticket. They were willing to give a golden ticket to the podcast to give away. And so Nikki Cottis won that, and that was a $1,500 value. Sorry, you didn't win it. I'm very sorry. I don't even know if you entered. You probably didn't. You missed your opportunity. So yeah. So before we talk about Dr. Mo, I'm going to go ahead and announce it. It's not recorded yet, but it is going to be recorded in 4 days from now. So like, I don't know. If he backs out, then I'm just going to look like a loser. But after a lot of thinking about who the first male guest would be, I had a couple people recommend Dr. Ben Tapper. And he said yes. So I'm excited for that. So the floodgates will be open now of like, now we can just have anybody on, despite their genitalia. Yep, doesn't matter what your genitals are or what you identify. Sorry to Carly Swift's kid if he's listening. He probably doesn't get that reference anyways. Yeah, so Ben Tapper is going to be on. I don't know what episode. I'll probably release it as soon as possible. So let's talk about Dr. Mo. So Dr. Monique Andrews is a teacher and scholar and a embodied neuroscience who leads seminars and workshops around the world. Make sure you are following her on Instagram. Dr. Mo knows she just drops so much free content that makes you, I'm 12 years in practice and I think we just forget. Also, there's just research that has happened since I was in school. Or it's just the stuff we don't necessarily get in school. So she's a longtime student of neuroscience, chiropractic, and Eastern spiritual practices. She presents from a unique perspective, blending modern tools with ancient wisdom. She draws on years of intensive study and teaching, and she has become an expert in embodied somatic practices, huge for like polyvagal theory and nervous system regulation. She does classes regularly. So like last year, We took her polyvagal applied in kids class. I think it was like ridiculously cheap, like $200, and all of our docs listened to it. And we have implemented some of that with some of our most difficult cases. And just incredible. You're kind of like, what? That works? Well, I didn't say that. So she also runs the Prana Foundation with her wife, Dr. Tamara McIntyre. And she's just a powerful guide and mentor for those drawn to evolving their wisdom and easing the path for others. Our associate, Dr. Jess, went to one of their prana retreats last November and said it was life-changing and it is underpriced. So the next time they release it, make sure you do it before they listen to this and raise their price, because when Dr. Jess came back, I was like, shit, all right, that's a good deal you're getting there. So let's all take a breath. Go back in time. Episode 35. Let's see, what month, what year would this be? So we started in June of 2019. I don't know. I'm thinking this is like December or January of 2019, 2020. This is definitely pre-March of 2020. I know that. So it's somewhere in there. Dear God, thank you so much for universal messages of truth that never get old, that we need to be reminded of. Thank you for scientists who are obsessed with combining truth, truth about love, truth about spirit, and discovering human consciousness and connecting that to science. So it is more palatable to some and more easy for some of the more analytical to accept as necessary science, as so much of these areas with the vagus nerve and spirituality and consciousness and meditation that we are continuing to tap into. I mean, not me, I suck, but like other people you've put on this earth are continuing to tap into. It is becoming more and more apparent that it is the answer. It is part of the answer to what this earth needs for anxiety, IBS, depression, so much mental health, so much chronic disease, chronic pain. And so just continue to help those of us who have platforms to give that platform, to share it with these people who are doing amazing things, and help everybody listening absorb what they can and help them take it, whether they are chiropractors or not. Help them take it into their personal life. Help them be the embodiment of it so their children see them focusing on that. And so their coworkers see, like, what's different? Oh, I've started this. I've learned about this. I read this book. So no matter who we are and what our profession is, help us to continue to focus on kindness and love in our communication, and just continue to dive in deep into learning. In your name we pray. Amen. Okay, folks, here is episode 35, back in time, into the present future as episode 201, my conversation with the one and only Dr. Monique Andrews.
So do you like Dr. Mo?
Most people call me Dr. Mo.
Okay. I was going to say somewhere along the lines of air quotes here, meeting you, I just fell into that, like writing you an email like, hey, Dr. Mo. And I'm like, wait a minute. Did I make this up? Did I just give, like, when you give your patients a nickname and you're like, sorry.
Yeah, no. Okay. That's been with me a long time. It's really stuck.
Okay. It's one of those ones that whether you like it or not, you're getting called Dr. Mo. Yeah. All right. So I'm super excited to have you on. So I'll tell everybody listening kind of how we connected. So honestly, through Instagram, where everybody connects nowadays, right? But no, we've never met each other in person.
Not yet.
But I had posted on Instagram that like in 2019, my goal was to like have a meditation practice. And by that, I meant like, if somebody asks me, do you meditate? I mean, most of us go, oh yeah, I've meditated before. And I sucked. I failed I tried like the last month, like I'm going to do this. It didn't work. I'm kicking off January much better, but you had reached out of like, we should talk. And so then I started doing what you do on Instagram and started stalking you. And I was like, this chick is badass. And I really wanted to have you on. So welcome to the show, Dr. Mo.
Oh, thanks so much, Lauren. It's a real pleasure. Funny that we connected on meditation because some people know that, that's one of my jams, but, most people know me as a neuro geek. So really, I'm so excited that that's actually how we connected.
Yeah, and I'm sure we will dive into it. So before we start, I have to I always highlight this on my notes before I go into an interview. Make sure you ask their backstory, because I think on no less than 5 interviews have I gotten about 20 minutes in, and I'm like, oh shit, we never told anybody who you were.
Right.
So it's a cliche question. I hate answering it on other podcasts because I feel like I've said it, but for real, tell us your story, who you are.
Wow, how far back do you want me to go?
You go as far back as your innate tells you to go.
So I'm a chiropractor, I'm a neuroscientist, and I'm a teacher. Mostly that's how I see myself, as a teacher. And that goes way back. I grew up in a small town in Newfoundland, Canada, which is like this little island off the East Coast. I now live on an island off the West Coast, Victoria, Vancouver Island. Anyway, I actually went to school to become a journalist. And 3 years of that not going very well and not really finding any passion, I stumbled across psychology. I went to my first psychology class. It was like a freshman psychology class in my 3rd year.
Yep.
And I was hooked. I became fascinated with the human mind and consciousness. And that ultimately led me into doing a combined psychology theology majors in undergrad, which then led me to a neuroscience master's degree.
Okay. So chiropractic came later.
After that. Yeah. And in fact.
Yeah, you're like a degree junkie.
Yeah, I'm a degree junkie. Yeah. So when I was doing my master's degree, or shortly after, I was a research associate. That's when I met this incredible woman and followed her to chiropractic school. Lots of people have great chiropractic stories. Mine is I followed a girl. So we went to school together. Then we went back to Canada. We went to school at Palmer Davenport.
Okay.
And then we went back to Canada, where we were in private practice together for about 13 years. From there, we we're teaching and administrators at Life Chiropractic College West for the last 6 years, finished up there, and now we're back in Canada, and we have created the Prana Foundation.
Yeah, I saw that. So I think it's really cool. I feel like a lot of stories with chiropractors who fall in love with the science is they went to chiropractic first, and then I don't want to say that it's like that they needed it to be more, but it's almost like they wanted to justify that chiropractic is real. And so they go down this thing of research. I think it's incredibly cool that you knew all this science and then were found chiropractic and is yep, everything I know, this is a profession, this is worth my time and money to add this in. So that is really cool and kind of unique.
Yeah. Do you know what's really cool is what kind of happened was the opposite thing for me, where I had already had all this science. And I think it's a natural evolution to go from neuroscience to chiropractic, especially now. And I could talk about that forever. But what happened to me was I think it was my 3rd trimester, I got to hear Reggie Gold speak on campus. And I went from just purely into the science of chiropractic to being completely immersed in the philosophy. So for me, that's why I can be so passionate, because I understand the philosophy deeply. And, chiropractic's a 3-legged stool, and it can't exist without any of those, either the science, the art, or the philosophy.
I'm glad you threw art in there. I'm like, wait, what's the 3rd stool? Yeah, no, absolutely. So then, science came first, then chiropractic. A question on the science world, just really quick. Is science as much of a dude's world as I anticipated is? So when did you start going through this? Were you the only female going through that program? Not chiropractic, but like when you're getting your master's?
No, when you look at like hard bench science, there is, it's like any industry at the top tier. It's often, the white male patriarch that runs it.
Mm-hmm.
But, like chiropractic now is 50% men and women, at least in chiropractic schools, not in chiropractic practice, sadly. But so oftentimes in bench science, it really depends on your program. You take some complicated engineering programs, oftentimes those tend to be more male dominated, but I think it's really quite varied now. Science is not, all of our brains work very similarly. And I don't think science necessarily is dominated by males, at least not at the bench level.
Good. And you're seeing females. Yeah, no, I definitely wouldn't think it would have to do with brain function, but just like women being willing to enter the conversation of science.
Yeah, I think my neuroscience lab actually had more women than men in it. It was awesome. I loved that time. And it's my, my passion is neuroscience as much as it is chiropractic. And I just love sharing that.
Yeah. Did you always know you wanted to teach? So like, it's hard because when you say you think of yourself as a teacher, I wanted to cut you off, but you were only 30 seconds in. And I thought that would be rude. Like you get warmed up a little more. But like, so doctor, all of the chiropractors listening know that doctor means teacher, but probably nobody else does. So when you say like you think of yourself as a teacher, do you, and now that you're back in practice, back from teaching?
Not in practice.
Nope.
We're focusing solely on launching the foundation and developing a number of different programs through there. But we can probably talk about that a little bit later. I love this question where you're going on in terms of teaching. And for me, no, I didn't always know. I remember, in fact, Brian Kelly, when I was at my early days at Life West, he said to me, did you train to be this good, or is it just a gift? And honestly, I can't really answer that except to tell you that I feel like my highest calling is to teach. When I was in chiropractic college, I had this awesome CNS instructor, and his name was Gail Llewellyn, and he was a Mormon preacher, actually. And he just had this ability to enrapture you, teaching the hardest stuff to learn in chiropractic college. And I think that's what lit the fire for me to teach, because I just wanted to inspire at the same level that he could. And he's since passed, but when I think back on my chiropractic college experience, that's what I remember. And I wanted to do that same thing for students when I was teaching there.
What I love that you said that you wouldn't normally hear associated with a CNS class, central nervous system, again, for non, is inspire. And so that is, that's an interesting word that I haven't typically heard in like teaching science. And so you kind of incorporate that into the way that you teach.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's the thing, that parable, right? If you feed someone, give someone a fish, you feed them for a day, right? And so my style of learning, I used to jokingly call it edutainment, because students like enjoyed my class. Students enjoy teaching, my teaching. And once I got back, got beyond the ego stroking of that, I realized that I had this opportunity to like literally inspire people, to engage them, to want to know more. And I think that goes beyond the idea of giving them a fish to teaching them how to think, right? And I think that's something that is really amiss these days in this technologically focused world, right? Like our phones have changed our brains because you no longer have to store data. Well, our character is created by the data in the brain, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if all the data is in the phone, what's in the brain?
Right. No, nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. You should say that, because one of the things I wanted to ask was like, do you find that the instant gratification and just the way social media is intentionally manipulating our brains to like seek more and more, is it harder to teach and get like, because in order for me to sit here and be inspired by science, and for you to like break down these principles to something that I can digest, I need to have a certain attention span and yearning for it. So have you found that your students over the last like decade have shifted in like, it just takes a lot more?
Well, here's the thing. I think that as teachers, we have a responsibility, and I just made a commitment to show up 110% every day. And I think I did a really great job at engaging students. And I think that's hard. I think that's not necessarily learned, but one of my mentors one time said, he was talking about ROFs actually. And he said, you should show up every day like it's a performance. And that just to be passionate about something is not enough. You have to also be effective at communicating that passion. And that was just a commitment that I made, that I make when I go in to teach, whether it's in a classroom or on a stage. It's a commitment.
Mm-hmm. And so you left teaching in 2019, right?
Yep.
Okay. So I do want to talk about the Prana Foundation, but like, do you miss having that like daily with students?
Yeah, I do. I miss being there on the daily, like having that interaction. We just came back from a 7-day retreat in Costa Rica where we brought a group of female chiropractic students. And for me, that just fills me up. It feels effortless to be able to get to share that intensely with a small group of women. And so, I get to, dial into my teaching jam when we're in that environment. And that is from, we do chiropractic workshops, we teach them meditation, personal development, and it's really just as much about serving others as it is serving self. I love it. Yeah, I miss being there on the daily, but I'm finding other ways through the foundation, through some of our programs, to be able to fulfill that craving of mine.
Well, and it's not so black and white that it's like you left and are not teaching. It seems like your path evolved into like teaching it looking like in a different way, encapsulating more than like this textbook curriculum that I've taught. So
yeah, definitely. And, I get to speak on stages all over the world, and that's just, for me, that's a thrill, and that's teaching. I think we're all, if you're a chiropractor, you're teaching people every day. Might be in front of one instead of 1,000, but I think it's just as important.
Yeah. So let's spin to the Prana Foundation. So you said that was kind of the main focus after leaving Life West, was to build up the Prana Foundation. So
yeah. We, after being after being in practice for so long and then being in an educational institution, you really start to see where the gaps are. And so the foundation really, we created as a nonprofit organization that's focused on creating a community and resources for not just chiropractors, although like you and your podcast, it's predominantly chiropractors at this point. I would say largely new chiropractors or chiropractors returning to practice and students. And essentially what we've created is an organization where we have different resources and different venues for people that to help them heal, and that fosters growth in personal as well as professional development through education, through mentorship, through community. And we do some of that through retreats and educational programs. And it's just building. We launched just before Thanksgiving, and we have a private Facebook community called the Prana Foundation Community Group, and it's over 600 strong already. We do lives every couple of weeks, and it's just been amazing. And that's free. Anybody can join the Prana Foundation community page, and that is really all about. And my wife and I, Dr. Tamara McIntyre, we host that group. And one of the things that we do are these Facebook lives that have just been such an incredible experience.
That's amazing. I got to write that down because I have to join that. I didn't see that. So that is awesome. So when you're picking these topics that you talk about within the Prana Foundation, I mean,
yep.
When you look at your bio and like the research that you've done, I mean, psychoneuroimmunology and neurology of reward and chiro and consciousness, like how do you, because You call yourself the science whisperer. I promise the question is coming. But like when you're dealing with a group of everything from chiropractic students to maybe even a non-chiropractor but is interested in the retreat, how do you even begin to connect with what that group needs and break down all of the knowledge in your head to communicate it to them?
We have been around in the profession in chiropractic, probably collectively between Tamara and I for, about 40 years. And so we really see where those points of suffering are. And it's really easy. Maybe it's not easy, but it's simple to see where the gaps are, especially for students and new docs, whether that's in how do I decide whether to associate or be an IC? What do I do about my shitty ROF? What do I do about my exam flow? What do you mean when you say being of service? There's there's so many topics. I think, we could be doing this every week and be able to hopefully fill some of those gaps. It's not easy to see where the pain points are. And we ask, there are a number of students and doctors that we mentor. And so it's easy to draw on that as well. And so the science piece for me is something totally separate.
Okay. It's more heart.
Yeah. It's really about how can we, one of our core values for the Prana Foundation is easing the path. And so how can we ease the path of suffering for our colleagues, for our students, for our doctors? And so, we pull on our many years of wisdom to try and help and do that. I'm not saying we have all the answers, but, we have some.
You got a good amount. Okay. So easing the path is kind of like that core value there. That is, that makes sense then with a lot of what is being provided and who it's for. So you said that the gaps became really clear. Why do you think that easing of the path is so needed? Like, do you think that this goes across multiple different professions? Do you think that like medical doctors need like an easing of the path, or is this kind of like a chiropractic specific?
No, this is a fundamental principle of humanity, easing the path. I mean, we could use any Christian, Buddhist, you name it, and follow all the way back to those spiritual philosophies that, I think our purpose, certainly my purpose here on this planet is to ease the path for others. It's about human kindness. That's not endemic to any profession. That's, a lesson we can learn from Jesus, from Buddha, from Muhammad, from whoever. What's our job? Our job is to be kind and take care of one another. That's not a foreign concept, but I think it's something that many have forgotten. And, technology today has isolated us. And we need community, we need connection. So for me, easing the path 100% is my greatest job as a human being.
Hey, She Slayers, so many of you connect with my story as a chiropractor because I started all wrong. Years into practice, I had to completely turn it around from being an insurance and pain-based model to a thriving, subluxation-based cash practice. I have a lot of ways that happened, but I am not exaggerating when I say the number one thing I changed was adding CLA's Insight scanning technology. The Insight helped grow our practice from 300 people a week to over 500 a week in the course of 1 year, purely by showing objective findings and providing reports to patients. So many docs I talk to struggle to communicate the why behind a care plan when the patient's pain goes away in a few visits. They struggle to keep patients after insurance stops paying. They don't know how to explain why a kid benefits from chiropractic care, even though they have no symptoms. They don't do progress exams because what am I going to do to show the patient progress? I am telling you, every single thing I just said, my answer to the doc is, are you using Insight scanning technology in your clinic yet? Because it's the solution to all of those issues. If you have questions, the staff at CLA is absolutely incredible and will help answer those questions and help implement this big change into your practice. Click the link below in the show notes as She Slays listeners Get preferred pricing and hundreds of dollars off their purchase. Hey, She Slayers. I just wanted to take a moment to ask you, have you heard of PX? I don't know. Have I mentioned them before? So they're practically everywhere these days, and I am so excited to have them as a sponsor on our show because they are on a mission that I can seriously get behind. So Dr. Tony and his team have designed a pediatric, prenatal, and family chiropractic training program that has online and live event training opportunities to learn step-by-step the science, clinical protocols, and business systems behind building a thriving pediatric and family chiropractic practice. Now, here's what's extra cool. It doesn't matter if you're a student, startup, or practicing chiropractor. I mean, I am a member and I've been in practice for over 12 years now. Each and every bit of their training is applicable to you and where you're at. I've been a part of PX for a while now, and I can say that there's no one better in the space to lead you and to lead this profession than Dr. Tony and his team. If you want to take your practice to the next level in serving more kiddos and families in your community, then you must check out PX. I will drop a link in the show notes so you can head over to thepediatricexperience.com and let them know She Slays the podcast sent you there for a special little bonus. Hey, She Slayers. When I first started practice, I thought I needed to dress a certain way for patients to trust me, and I spent hours trying to design communication and marketing materials that worked. After 12 years of practice, here's a couple things I've learned. 1, I don't have to wear dress pants and button-ups for a patient to take me seriously. And 2, why recreate the wheel when a design professional has already done all the work for me? Well Aligned offers solutions in both of these categories. They have the coolest and most comfy chiropractic shirts that will showcase your personality, as well as beautifully designed communication and marketing tools to help drive new patients, get more referrals, and gain better retention in your practice. From the best chiropractic apparel to modern patient education materials, Well Aligned has you covered. All She Slayers get 10% off plus free shipping on orders of $75 or more with promo code SheSlays. Visit www.wellaligned.com to save.
Okay, and so that's where like the psychology aspect, that's where that passion kind of started. So then how does the science, and I'm so sorry if this is a dumb question, how does the science fit in with this spirituality and love and easing of the path?
So, gosh, where to begin? I'll try and put the crumbs really close together. That's something I say I always do. Okay. And that is if you look at, so if we take consciousness, for example, if you look at
what's consciousness?
So consciousness is basic. There's different types of consciousness, but if we talk about it from a purely, well, even from a scientific perspective, consciousness is our awareness of what's happening in the world, right? And so
is that like the ego, the id,
I think ego gets represented pretty dominantly in consciousness because it's this running narrative it's like a river. It's this stream of consciousness that's always going. It's this constant narrative. And, consciousness is something that's been called the hard problem of science because it's only in the last 20 years really that neuroscientists started to study it because, no pun intended, we just can't get our head around it. It's like, how do you study that, something that's so intangible, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been studying consciousness for probably, this is going to make me sound really old, for 30 years. And then the chiropractic thing came after. But what's beautiful now is that the chiropractic neuroscience tells us that the areas of the brain that are impacted by the adjustment are the same areas where neuroscience today is starting to say consciousness resides.
Really?
Yeah.
So specific type of adjustment, specific vertebrae?
No. If you look at the way that information gets transmitted to the brain. So if you stimulate the spine, you're going to send a message back to the brain through sensory spinal tracts. And what then happens is certain areas of the brain are going to respond to that information. So one area in particular is the prefrontal cortex that really, shows dramatic changes in electrophysiological studies, metabolic studies. So when you adjust someone, you'll see that you're going to see changes in structure and function of the prefrontal cortex. Now, here's where the consciousness piece comes in. Let me know if I lose you at any point.
Yeah, don't worry.
Okay. Consciousness, one of the main areas. Now, consciousness, they've been playing around in neuroscience to see where it resides. One of the main areas that they're seeing that there's actual conscious thought is the prefrontal cortex. And that really is the seat of what makes us uniquely human. Because it's more developed in the human, the cerebral frontal cortex, than any other species. Because, we're supposed to be this, in terms of the hierarchy, the highest evolution of thinking beings, right? I mean, supposedly the only thinking beings.
Right.
I don't know if I agree with that.
Not have consciousness.
What's that?
So a dog doesn't have consciousness?
Well, I think maybe dogs and cats do. And that, honestly, Amy Haas, who's this brilliant friend of mine, one time we were talking, I said, what percentage of information do you think we understand about the brain? And I'm thinking double digits, like maybe 11, 12. And she's like, maybe 2%. And I was like, crushed.
Wow.
So we know so little. I think that we're never going to know everything there is to know about the brain in my lifetime. And that's part of what makes it amazing, I think, because there's so much landscape to explore. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because it shares something with so we're not going to know nearly as much about space and the universe in our lifetime. And we're also not going to know, we maybe know 2% about energy and spirituality and all of that. And it's funny because we have so many people who are trying to be no, this is how it is, and refuse to open up that we really don't know most of what's going on.
That's sorry, go ahead.
No, you were going.
I was going to say that's the scariest thing, when people just close their mind down. That's scarier than not knowing, is scarier than refusing to know.
Yeah, absolutely. So you were starting to line up the cookies for me of how this is, how the science comes together with this. So you were saying the prefrontal cortex. We have this.
So when you adjust somebody, you actually are impacting the brain, and not just the cerebellum in ways that affect locomotion and sensory experience, but actually potentially impacting the way we think, the way we feel, the way we experience this vast richness that's our life, right? And so for me, that's, we have this idea that chiropractic unites man, the physical with man, the spiritual, or human, the physical with human, the spiritual. Well, the idea that if we are adjusting the brain in areas that change our conscious experience, our sense of spirituality, perhaps, our sense of energy even, then I think that really closes the gap on that argument between how do we do that? If we're claiming we're uniting man, the physical with man, the spiritual, well, tell me how, because that's what everybody wants to know. I'm saying we're closer to that answer than we ever have been.
Interesting. And is it always positive? Is every adjustment always going to give positive consciousness to the prefrontal cortex, or is there such a thing as negative consciousness? I mean, I don't think it's not like, oh, adjust here and you're going to increase your consciousness by 10%. Well, I don't think it's like that. We have this idea that when the adjustment is about removing any interference to the body's innate intelligence to grow and heal and to be infinite in its potential. I think it's just like that. And no more that we can really pinpoint, I'm going to, change this aspect of your behavior. Can we say we're going to change this aspect of consciousness? It's so fluid and dynamic. I would never make that claim. Right. Got it. Okay. So when I meditate, so much of the goal is to get that constant thought train to stop and just be, so am I dulling and ignoring the consciousness, or is that the observer, calm state, the ultimate consciousness? Do you understand what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, no, I do.
fun.
It's a great question. It's actually something that we teach on our retreats, and that is about that there's different states of consciousness. Now, a lot of people there's different types of meditation. There's different states of consciousness too. That's a whole other story. But what I wanted to say is that there's different kinds of meditation. And a lot of people have this misperception that you're supposed to sit in a corner and not think and levitate. I'm going to tell you this. Guess what? It's impossible to not think, because that's your brain's job. The real purpose of meditation, and there's a lot of different ways to do that, whether it's, through chanting, through mindfulness meditation, through Zen, through staring at a candle, guided meditations. The real purpose of meditation is to expand the range of experiences in which we feel free. People talk about, just write that one down and let that sink in. I'll say it again.
Exploded.
I'll say it again.
And
the purpose of meditation is to expand the range of experiences in which we feel free. Now, people have this idea of financial freedom, or that freedom means you have lots of time. I would actually argue that the only source of true suffering that any human experiences comes from the conscious mind. It's from these stories that we tell ourselves. The purpose of meditation is to take you out of that running stream of consciousness. I'll tell you this, if you're starting out as a new meditator and you sit down and you think, I'm not going to think, wrong. The brain's job is to think.
So
find a good
teacher
recommend
as somebody's getting into meditation? Like, where do they start? You listed a bunch of different ones. Is there better ones?
Yeah. I mean, I would reach out to people. If you have mentors that know or understand the process of meditation, there's classes, there's a meditation center just opened up here in Victoria. It's awesome. Sometimes meditation happens in the form of prayer. I remember going to church on Sundays and just being like, I always left there feeling so peaceful. Mm-hmm. Meditation is different. For some people, meditation is, for my wife, it's on a bicycle, like grinding up a hill for an hour.
Well, I was going to ask, because runner's high I'm a long distance runner, and runner's high is one of the best forms. But I'm like, am I allowed to say that I'm meditating while running and trying not to get bitten?
You're allowed to say whatever you want, okay. Lauren. Do you know what? If you go into an altered state of consciousness, you are freeing the mind. And I think that's possible with something like a runner's high.
And just so typical of our society to take something whose purpose is to expand and give more freedom, and try and put like so many labels around, like, am I doing it right? And it's like, no, you're doing it wrong, because you're asking if you're doing it right. That's the only part of this that's wrong.
You know what? You can't, there's not wrong ways, but maybe there's better ways. And I recommend.
Spoken like a great teacher. I'm just like, yeah, you are. You suck at this. Get better. And you're like, well, there's ways to be better.
I would maybe recommend, for the pure novice, getting an app called Insight Timer, and maybe starting with some guided meditation or chanting. And then the other piece is really to create a daily practice. And if you can, commit to, and what I always say, let's at least get to double digits, commit to 11 minutes a day, and create a ritual around that, where maybe you find a sacred space, you light a candle, maybe read a passage. It could be from the Bible. For me, I read usually some sort of Buddhist transcript, and often I read Pema Chodron, who I love, love, love. It's been a mentor of mine for about 30 years. I've been studying Pema Chodron. And make a sacred ritual around it, and make that commitment to self. And I think if you can make a daily practice at least one time a day of at least 11 minutes, you're on the way.
And be forgiving. That, like, else, like, your first
ease the path.
Like, yes.
Easing the path for others also means easing the path for self, right? Like, we have to be kind and gentle. That's something that Pema always says, is that kindness for others starts with gentleness with yourself.
So you seem to have a very strong theological and philosophical background mixed in with the deep scientific knowledge. Has having a faith tradition and mysticism caused any problems or arguments as you deal with other scientists? Like I would assume it's a pretty atheist / agnostic group.
It's not, but I totally hear what you're saying. And, I have definitely bumped up against those things. And, 50-year-old me is really different than 30-year-old me because I'm no longer
getting in fights and bars.
It takes a lot to, rile me up. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. And I remember when students would ask me all the time, how can you be so into the philosophy and the science at the same time? There's this quote from Albert Einstein. What is it? It's like science without religion. No, religion without science is...
I know what quote you're talking about.
Let me look it up. I'm going to look it up really quickly because I don't want to forget it. It's such a good quote. Science without religion. You're going to have to edit this now. Sorry.
No. Kirby found it. Science without religion is lame. Religion without science is blind. Is that it?
That's it. Yeah. Science without religion without science is lame. Is that what it is?
The science without religion is lame. And religion without science is blind.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah.
So for me, yeah, you know what? So science, people have this idea that science is this like
it's cold-hearted thing that
it's perfect. Well, or that it's like perfect. You might notice that if you look at anything, even Einstein's theory of relativity is a theory. In science, very few things, except maybe in like particle physics, are accepted as absolute fact. Everything is theoretical. And you know what? Just as soon as one science paper gets published, the next week there's something else refuting it. So this idea that we have to hold on to this one truth. Yeah, I think we're going to find, and probably not in my lifetime, that our current attachment to like hard science, it'll be toppled by, a greater understanding of the energy of the world. I mean, particle physics is already there. Quantum physics is already talking about these things that we deem in, the not particle physical world as metaphysical. It's already happening. Look at,
I was going to say, there's already conversations with Joe Dispenza bringing in and I just picture scientists getting all squirmy in their lab coats being like, how do I prove that type of thing? But you're saying like, no, it's been breaking down, and it's a false interpretation of what science is.
Yeah.
So what do you, kind of back to the philosophy and science and chiropractic, what do you like versus not like that is being said around chiropractic subluxation?
Great question. One of the things I teach about when I go and speak at conferences is the neurophysiology of subluxation. So there's this whole faction within chiropractic, a large faction that's really focused on just making chiropractic a musculoskeletal industry or musculoskeletal profession. It's really strong in Canada. It's really strong in other countries too, like Australia. And some of that I think comes from fear, from a scarcity mentality. And I don't want to get into a whole,
Oh yeah. We're a mixer and straight, love fest here. There's no hate towards anyone. So
yeah. And me too. Everybody gets to be in the realm that they're in. But for me, given that we have science that shows us beyond a reasonable doubt that we are impacting brain function when you adjust somebody, that we're impacting neurology. I don't know why you'd want to take out the neuro from the neuromusculoskeletal. Everybody doesn't have back and neck pain, but everybody has a brain. Mm-hmm. So why not talk about it?
So why do you think Canada isn't wanting to talk about it?
It's complicated. It's a very different, we have,
it's got to be politics.
I'm air quoting free healthcare. Air quoting free healthcare. It's not really free because, we pay pretty high taxes to get access to really a sick care model, to go to a medical doctor. Really, you don't go because you're feeling good. You go because there's something happening. And so there's this idea that anything outside of that, that's a paid service, is really a luxury. And it's really tied into insurance and things like that. And I think the whole insurance racket creates a different story where chiropractic service comes from.
Yeah, they need it to make sense because, and it's not, it's kind of different because I was saying like, oh, do scientists struggle with this like kind of more woo-woo, blah, blah, blah. But I have a feeling that who struggles with the, again, I'll do air quotes, woo-woo of chiropractic, meaning the philosophy, and it being more than musculoskeletal, are like business models and like insurance, adjusters being I need to know like what percentage is this, that. And it's like, and we're just like, free love, man. And they're like, no, it's not working.
But here's the hard truth, Lauren. And that is we actually now have science that shows we're impacting neurology, in particular, not just peripheral neurology, but the brain with the adjustment. So the science exists. It's not woo-woo.
Yeah.
And I think this focus on musculoskeletal is really taking us away from the deep heart of the purpose of why we do what we do as chiropractors.
Do you ever get fired up to like, because I am sure you hear over and over and over, there's no research, blah, blah, blah. We hear it,
I
get fired up to like, be like, actually, hi, it's Dr. Mo.
I do it all the time. I shout it from every stage that I'm involved in. I sit on the IFCO board to help really continue to promulgate the message that this is we have a practice that's focused on subluxation. That's unique to chiropractic. Other people maybe have the intention to remove interference from the nervous system in other ways, or to remove, any interference to innate intelligence. Acupuncture is focused on freeing energy in the body. What's unique to chiropractic is this idea of subluxation. And we own that. We own that word. I don't know why anybody would want to get rid of it. See, now you're getting me riled up.
It happens on the show. Don't worry. You haven't even swore yet. Okay. So is there a path, in your opinion, to getting that research in front of insurance companies and making an impact that way? I mean, I would assume it's cheaper to be treated by chiropractic versus pharmaceuticals. So like, I just can't wrap my head around why they're not like,
no, it's very political, Lauren. It's not as simple as get the research in front of them, because the research is out there. It exists. And neuroscience is uncovering more and more and more. It's really political. And I don't have all the answers. What I can recommend is that, chiropractors that are philosophical. I hate even that we have to say it's philosophical. Chiropractors that, and I won't say believe because it's science, you don't have to believe it. Chiropractors that are invested in maintaining the idea of subluxation, and that subluxation interferes with our body's ability to express itself at its fully. They should get involved with political organizations like the IFCO. They should get involved with their state organizations and things like that, because the only way to create change is by having a voice. BK, Brian Kelly used to say, if you're not sitting at the table, you're for dinner.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think we've definitely addressed some of the biggest threats to chiropractic. What would you say some of the biggest opportunities are to chiropractic over the next 10 years?
Yeah, I think if we can just stay true to the message. Here's the thing. If when we adjust somebody, we're impacting consciousness, wow, then maybe every chiropractor, and I hope every chiropractor is getting adjusted. I certainly know philosophy-based chiropractors are all getting adjusted regularly. I hope they are. Maybe we're going to have the most expansive consciousness there is, right? Maybe we won't be as stuck in ego. If we are uniting man, the physical with man, the spiritual, and maybe we get to create this existence where we're at such a high level of being, a high level of vibration that, talk to Donnie Epstein. He says, I love this quote from Donnie. He says, we're not adjusting spines, we're adjusting destiny. And it's something I say all the time from the stage, because I want people to understand that magnitude of what it is that we get to do every time we lay our hands on somebody. There's the gift. There's the opportunity. We need to own that.
So with an adjustment, how important do you think it is that the adjustor, the chiropractor, has intent?
I think intent is massive. Intent is massive because if you're not clear on your intention, I mean, if you're not paying attention to what you're doing, you can just as easily as cause harm as you can create positive change. You can.
I don't necessarily mean like, I can be like very much know that I'm adjusting a, subluxated T3 with a right rotation, posterior, blah, 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 all the letters. But what I mean by intention is like that quantum physics level of like, I am setting this bone and establishing consciousness for this patient. Like, I wish we could have research saying like how powerful one adjustment is without intent and feeling versus like, because I was reading Joe Dispenza's book where he was talking about where they had people in one of the, I don't know what, I can get you the research in his book, but like, so they had people who were trained in like heart mapping or some kind of like meditation.
Heart math.
Yeah.
Heart Math Institute.
Yeah.
It's heart rate variability, probably. And coherence.
Yeah. And so they had them hold test tubes of DNA and deionized water and try to just like have an intent of unwinding. They didn't get anything done. Then they had people hold it with like a positive feeling and an intent of unwinding. And like 25% of the DNA unwound but it needed that intention and feeling. So then I like look at an adjustment and like what I'm capable of doing. And I'm like, how much more powerful are my adjustments if I am like zoned in and present and like there doing that?
What a great question, right? And one that I can't answer from an empirical perspective, that nobody has answered from an empirical perspective. But, if I'm guessing, if I'm imagining, I can only imagine that it's more powerful. Now, is that to say that those chiropractors out there making an adjustment without that intention, if they're making the adjustment thinking, I'm going to move this bone so that the biomechanics are better because there's a musculoskeletal problem, I think that's still incredibly impactful.
Yes, agreed.
Is it as impactful as somebody, putting on their, super clear perspective, I'm adjusting from source to impact humanity? I don't know. Maybe not.
I'm thinking realistically in practice how difficult that would be. I would just like walk into the room and I would just be, because we have like a relatively high volume pediatric practice. So I just imagine like walking into a room of chaos and like the parents trying to tell me about their kid's ear infection, and me just being like, shh, quiet, lay down. I mean, like,
now,
or somebody like, oh, do you see the Packers? And I'm like, shut up. I'm adjusting you.
So when you get really good at your meditation practice, you will be able to free your mind in a second to drop into that in an instant, in the midst of all the chaos. I guarantee.
Okay, so it's weird you should say that, because I signed up for like a 21-day guided meditation with this guy. I don't know what his like official job title would be, Mas Sajadi. And anyway, so I'm only in like day 8, and I realized that I could drop into this like numb feeling in my, and I guess that's the only way I can describe it, as like I could drop in within like a second to this numb feeling, but then ego wanted to come in and be like, no, you're not doing it right. There's no way that you are able to be meditating this well this soon. Like you're lying to yourself type thing. And I'm like, oh.
So here's the invitation. Okay. I'm going to invite you now. And that is to let go of indulging your mind. So when you get to that place, just hear it. There's a technique that's called RAIN, where you recognize, oh, there's a shitty thought, or there's any thought. So your thought is, no, I can't be doing it right. RAIN stands for recognize. So you're like, oh, there's a thought. Acknowledge, oh, I'm having a thought.
Interesting. I would think that about myself.
Yeah. And then the I in RAIN is inspect. So you can go, I'm having it. It's okay. Maybe look at it a little bit. Don't start to go down a whole path with a grocery list. And then the last of the acronym is N, which is, they say non-attached. I also think non-judgment. So to just see that it's there, acknowledge that it's there, maybe go, that's interesting. And then don't judge yourself for having it, but non-attached and let it go. It's called the RAIN technique. You can Google it. It's all over the place. It's a great technique though, when you're first learning, because we have, again, it goes back to the idea, we need to be gentle with ourselves, especially when we're learning something new. Yeah.
And it's good to know, like, there's a technique. So this is like, again, back to the judging, like, this is something that all beginner and probably not even beginners deal with. Like, you probably very much are, you could be a professional meditator and like get a phone call that your mom's going into a hospital, and you might struggle that day being super focused, you know. So
any day. I've been meditating for years and I have a regular daily practice, and you know, every day is 100% different. That's the beauty of it. You can count on it. It's going to be different every time. And some days I can be zenned out for like 60 minutes. And other days I'm just like, kills me to get to 11 minutes. You know what I mean? It's not, this is again, I think if you just try and make it a daily practice, create some ritual around it, you'll find it's worth the investment.
Yeah. So the Prana Foundation is kind of like what your focus is on now, 100%. So how do you determine kind of like what's next for the Prana Foundation? Like, are you just really tapped in? Do you have all these like ideas? Do you have a scientist notebook where you're like, okay, and as soon as this gets up, I can't wait to start investigating like this? Like, how do these topics kind of come to you?
There's definitely some notebooks. There's a lot of planning that's gone in it. Again, we just launched just before Thanksgiving, but we have a lot of things planned. One of our, you know, bread and butters are the retreats. So we have another retreat. We just did one in December. We have another retreat, and we're doing them in Costa Rica. Probably we'll start doing them in Victoria later in the year. Victoria, Canada. We live in British Columbia.
Once it gets a little warmer.
We have another one coming in March 28th to April 3rd. So we still have some spaces on that one. So retreats are one thing. We also do educational seminars. My wife is doing a foundation seminar in the Bay Area next weekend. So lots of different things like that, and really focusing on creating this free community on Facebook so that we have, you know, resources available to students, to new docs, to seasoned docs for that matter, that we can come and just create a conversation, have connection.
Yeah, I like that as this place, because I agree with you. It is so needed. I'm a part of a couple different groups on Facebook, and I feel like every single day I see a chiropractor posting like, what do we have for research on X, Y, or Z? And it's like, how has somebody not created a damn forum so far of just all this in one spot?
So let me address that for you. And that is specifically on the science end of things. I'm about to launch a brand new program that I'll be hosting on behalf of the foundation. It's called Dr. Mo Knows. And Dr. Mo Knows
is like a really good podcast name.
Yeah, doesn't it? Only I'm going to take it one step further, and it's going to be similar to a podcast, but actually it's going to be a live call-in. And people will be able to call in and ask me questions about the science, mostly around chiropractic. And I'll be launching that program, Dr. Mo Knows, very soon, and people will see how they can get access to the program and what that's going to look like. But I'm going to be laying down the science in an easy to digest way so that people can take that message and communicate it themselves. So for me, it's not enough to get people fired up about the science. I want them to be able to communicate it.
And will other people be able to listen to the calls, or will it be like a one-on-one only private call?
No, it's going to be group call, and I'm going to do it via probably Zoom conference calls. And it'll be a subscription service that people can pay for and dial into, but I'll be launching that within the next couple of weeks. I'm not sure when this podcast is going to air, but Look for Dr. Mo Knows, and there's nothing like it out there. I've always thought that. And I'm like, how can I'm passionate about this, having this interaction, right? I don't want to be a talking head in a computer. I thrive under the fire of questions. And so I'm really excited to launch Dr. Mo Knows and put that venue out there where literally we're having this interactive experience around the science.
Yeah, that is really unique. I cannot think of anything like that.
And me neither. That's why I created it.
You're like, yeah, I know. I'm really smart. Okay, so what other things can and should we be consuming? You mentioned Pima?
Pemachodron.
Pemachodron.
I highly recommend reading, watching anything Pemachodron.
What else do you read, watch, listen to that inspires you?
I also mentioned Insight Timer in terms of a meditation app for beginners, and I even still use that sometimes. What else? I'm a big fan of Gabor Mate. He's a...
Did you say Gobbler Mate?
Gabor, Gabor.
Oh, that is not what. Okay.
First name. It sounds like Gabor, Gabor Mate, just like, mate, Mate.
Okay.
He wrote a great book called When the Body Says No, and really talks a lot about understanding, why we behave the way that we do and how we can change that.
Yes. Excellent. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. But you exploded my brain like 3 or 4 times, or I wrote down a quote. I'm going to go back and listen and just be like, Kirby, we need to have an hour-long conversation around expanding your access to freedom, and so beautiful. You dropped, where can people look for Dr. Mo Knows? What website? Give us your handles.
drmoniqueandrews.com is my website. The pranafoundation.org, we're a nonprofit organization, is another place you can find me. All over Facebook and Instagram. I'm at Dr. Monique Andrews, and I'll be launching the program probably through Facebook mostly. So you can find Dr. Mo Knows there. You can find applications for our retreats. Go to our Prana Foundation.
Could I go to a retreat like that?
Absolutely.
Would I feel what are you doing here, Lauren? There's 7 students and you. And I'm just
they're open. Our retreats are open to everybody. And we have workshops. We do service. We do personal development through meditation. I do a altered consciousness breath workshop on there. It's awesome. We do ecstatic dance. I don't think there's anything out there like this that exists.
I don't think so either. I think you're incredible and unique, and I love it. Thank you so much for being on. You are definitely very cool. I look forward to, we'll have to have you on again, maybe the end of 2020, and touch base on how Dr. Mo Knows is going.
Thanks, Lauren.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much. And She Slayers, reach out if you have questions. I know she'd love to answer them. And until next week, bye guys.
Thank you.